There's one thing, just one, that you should never tell anyone. Not your best friend. Not your partner. Not even your therapist. Because the moment you do, you give away your power. You think you're sharing. You think you're being real. But what you're doing is handing someone the blueprint to break you. We all carry something inside us that we've never said out loud. A thought, a fear, a whisper in the dark that makes us feel a little less than we appear. That thing, that private, buried insecurity, is the part of ourselves we wish we could erase. It's raw. It's real. And it feels like a weakness. So what do? We look for relief. We reach for someone. We think, if I just tell someone, maybe I'll feel lighter. And for a moment, maybe you do. But that moment is short-lived. Because what you've done without realizing it is hand over something sacred. You've offered your vulnerability as a gift without knowing how it will be held. Let me be clear, people are not always malicious. Most of them aren't. But most people are careless. They don't understand the weight of what you're giving them when you tell them what breaks you. Your deepest insecurity is not a casual thing, it's a blueprint to your heart, your mind, your past. And when it's shared too freely, it can be twisted, diluted, misunderstood. People can repeat it without your tone. They can share it without your context. And worst of all, they can use it without your permission. Not always to hurt, but always in ways you can't control. We look for relief. We reach for someone. We think, if I just tell someone, maybe I'll feel lighter. And for a moment, maybe you do. But that moment is short-lived, because what you've done without realizing it is hand over something sacred. You've offered your vulnerability as a gift without knowing how it will be held. Let me be clear, people are not always malicious. Most of them aren't. But most people are careless. They don't understand the weight of what you're giving them when you tell them what breaks you. Your deepest insecurity is not a casual thing, it's a blueprint to your heart, your mind, your past. And when it's shared too freely, it can be twisted, diluted, misunderstood. People can repeat it without your tone. They can share it without your context. And worst of all, they can use it without your permission. Not always to hurt, but always in ways you can't control. Think about this: the moment someone knows what you're insecure about, they gain power even if they don't know it. They now hold the trigger. And maybe they never pull it. But the fact that they could, that alone is dangerous. That's why you have to protect that space inside you like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. Emotional safety isn't about locking yourself away. It's about being selective. It's about asking, who has earned the right to hold this part of me? Not everyone has. And most never will. It doesn't matter how close someone seems. Time doesn't equal trust. Proximity doesn't equal loyalty. Someone can stand right beside you and still not have the maturity, the empathy, or the character to understand what your insecurity means to you. They might laugh at it. They might minimize it. Or worse, they might use it later when they're angry, when they're insecure, when they're trying to win. And then suddenly your private battle becomes their public weapon. What felt like relief in the moment becomes regret in the aftermath. You also have to understand something crucial. Your insecurity is not fixed. It's not permanent. It's a season, a chapter, a scar still healing. And when you share it at its most vulnerable stage, you allow someone to define you by a version of yourself that's still evolving. You are giving them insight into a part of your identity that may not even exist a year from now. But people don't update the way they see you. They hold on to what you said in a moment of pain and make it who you are. That's how labels are born. That's how stories get rewritten. So when you feel that urge to confess your deepest insecurity, pause. Ask yourself, am I looking for connection? Or am I just desperate to feel seen? because those are not the same thing. You do not need to bleed to prove you're real. You do not need to unravel to be loved. Hold that part of yourself sacred. Let it grow. Let it strengthen. Let it evolve behind closed doors. And when the world finally sees you, let them see the person who conquered it, not the one who was still bleeding from it. Real power doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It doesn't explain. It just is. We've been taught that strength is loud, that we need to broadcast our struggles and wins to prove that we're real, that we're strong. But the truth, the strongest people in the room are often the quietest. They don't need to prove their worth. Their presence alone does that. Power doesn't look like constant validation. It looks like composure when others crumble. It's the calm in your eyes when chaos surrounds you. The world teaches us to shout, but power whispers. And the whisper, when timed right, shakes the ground more than any scream ever could. The reason real power is quiet is because it's rooted in certainty. When you know who you are, when you've done the inner work, when you've fought your battles in silence and come out standing, you don't need noise. You don't need the applause or the approval. You walk into a room and your energy does the talking. You're not selling yourself. You're not begging to be understood. You let the silence say what words can't. And when someone tries to question you, doubt you, challenge you, you don't react. Because the truth is, when you're truly powerful, you don't entertain weakness in disguise. Think about the people who really move you, the ones who shift the room without effort. They don't announce their presence, they don't explain their journey. They've mastered the art of letting their actions speak. And when they speak, it's not constant. It's intentional. It lands. It cuts through the noise. That's not by accident, it's by design. They've chosen silence as a strategy because they understand that mystery creates interest, that not revealing everything keeps people guessing. And curiosity, that's one of the greatest forms of control. The less you say, the more they want to know. And the more they want to know, the more power you hold. In a world that overshares, silence is rebellion. Everyone is broadcasting their lives, their wounds, their wins, their losses, hoping someone out there will validate their worth. But when you withhold, when you stay private, when you resist the urge to overshare, you separate yourself. You no longer need the world's permission to exist. That's when the dynamic shifts. That's when you're not just seen, you're respected. Because silence shows discipline. Silence shows control. Silence shows that you are not afraid to be misunderstood. And nothing is more intimidating than someone who doesn't need to be explained. Silence, when used with intention, becomes your armor. It shields you from assumptions, from judgment, from manipulation. When people don't know what moves you, they can't control you. When they don't know what scares you, they can't shake you. And when they don't know what you want, they can't use it against you. This isn't about being cold or closed off. It's about being calculated. It's about knowing when to speak, what to reveal, and who deserves access to your truth. Because once your truth is out there, you can't take it back. And not everyone will hold it with the care it deserves. Understand this, your silence is not emptiness, it's power and reserve. You're not withholding because you have nothing to say. You're withholding because not everything needs to be said. Not everyone deserves to know your next move, your old scars, or your dreams. When you choose silence, you choose control. You choose sovereignty. You become untouchable not because you're distant, but because you've decided your energy is not up for public consumption. And in a world addicted to attention, that kind of control, that kind of quiet power, that's the most dangerous kind there, Ice Dot. Most people can't handle the weight of your truth, not because your truth is too much, but because their capacity is too small. You may believe that opening up to someone will bring you closer, help you feel seen, understood. But more often than not, the opposite happens. People hear your truth through the filter of their own fears, their own insecurities, their own broken lens. They're not listening to understand, they're listening to respond, to relate it back to themselves, to shrink your experience until it fits their version of the world. And suddenly, what was sacred becomes small. What was raw becomes diluted. Your truth no longer belongs to you. When you speak your truth, you're offering something pure. It's not rehearsed, it's not polished, it's the unfiltered part of you that took courage to acknowledge. But the person on the other side may not be ready to receive it. They may smile, nod, pretend they get it, but deep down they're filing it away in the wrong drawer. Mislabeling it, misjudging it. Not out of cruelty, but out of limitation. Most people haven't even faced their own truth, so how can they be trusted with yours? You're asking them to hold space for something they've never held for themselves. Worse yet, people weaponize what they don't understand. They may not even mean to. But your honesty can become a tool in someone else's insecurity. Maybe they repeat it casually to someone else. Maybe they bring it up in a moment of tension. Or maybe they simply begin to see you differently, less capable, less strong, less worthy. They don't see the bravery it took to speak. They see the flaw you exposed. They don't see the healing, they see the wound. And whether intentional or not, your truth becomes ammunition in the wrong hands. Not everyone will pull the trigger. But once you've handed over the bullet, it's no longer yours to control. There's also a danger in expecting people to hold your truth the way you hold it. You might assume they'll protect it, nurture it, treat it with reverence, but you don't get to decide how someone else receives you. You can't guarantee how they'll store what you've shared. And often, they don't mean harm, they just don't know what to do with it. They might change the subject. They might laugh it off. They might say the wrong thing entirely, not because your truth wasn't valid, but because they weren't ready for it. And in that moment, you realize how alone truth can feel when placed in the wrong hands. There's this idea that vulnerability automatically creates intimacy, but that's not always true. Vulnerability creates intimacy only when it's met with understanding, with presence, with depth. Otherwise, it creates distance, discomfort, misalignment. You end up feeling more isolated, not less. You start questioning whether you should have said anything at all. And once that thought enters your mind, it stays. It changes how you show up. You pull back, you doubt. You build walls you never had before. Not because you wanted to, but because someone couldn't carry what you gave them with care. So before you speak your truth, ask yourself, is this person capable of hearing it? Have they earned the right to know this part of me? Not everyone gets access. Not everyone deserves that level of intimacy. Your truth is sacred. It's not a confession. It's not content. It's a core part of who you are. And when you share it too freely, with people who can't meet you there, you drain its meaning. You rob it of its depth. Truth is not a gift for the masses, it's a privilege for the few. Choose those few with wisdom, or risk watching your truth become a story you no longer recognize. They told you to speak your truth, to be open, to be real. The world glorifies vulnerability like it's always the right choice. Like silence equals fear or withholding means you're hiding. But here's the truth, no one talks about silence is not weakness. It's strategy. And knowing when to speak versus when to stay silent is a level of emotional intelligence that most people never master. It's not about pretending, it's about protecting, because your life, your pain, your healing process is not public property. It doesn't belong to the opinions of strangers or the comfort of others. Sometimes silence is not a wall, it's a boundary. One that says this part of me is mine. Speaking too soon can expose you to energies that don't deserve access to your truth. People will hear you, but they won't always receive you. And if you speak before you're ready, before you're rooted in your own power, you invite misunderstanding. You invite projection. You open the door to judgment and commentary from those who haven't earned the right to witness your process. And once the words are out, you can't take them back. You can clarify, you can explain, but you can't erase. And too often people carry your words in ways you never intended. They store them in their memory, not with care, but with bias, confusion, or carelessness. Silence, on the other hand, keeps your power where it belongs with you. It allows you to think clearly, to process deeply, to choose what to reveal and what to hold sacred. You are not obligated to bleed publicly to prove you're real. You don't have to share every chapter of your journey just because someone asks. In fact, the strongest people are often the most private. They don't perform their pain. They transform it quietly. And when they do speak, it's not out of need, it's out of intention. Every word has weight because it wasn't thrown around loosely. Silence gives your voice value. It sharpens your message. It protects your evolution. People misread silence all the time. They assume you're cold, guarded, untrusting. But what they don't see is the strength it takes to choose stillness in a world obsessed with noise. They don't realize that silence isn't passive, it's deliberate. It's the decision to own your story instead of handing it over for others to dissect. When you stay silent, you become unpredictable. And that unpredictability makes people uncomfortable because they can't figure you out. They can't define you, they can't label you. That discomfort, that's your power. Because when they can't reduce you to a single narrative, they're forced to respect your complexity. Silence also teaches you patience. It gives you space to watch people, to read their intentions, to observe their energy. It lets you see who truly listens without you saying a word. Who leans in with presence, not curiosity. Who shows you, not just with words, but with actions, that they are safe. And when you do decide to speak, those words land with precision. They hit harder. They resonate deeper. Because you've waited, you've watched, you've chosen your moment. And when you finally reveal that part of yourself, it's not from a place of desperation, it's from a place of clarity. Never confuse silence with suppression. Suppression is fear. Silence is discipline. Suppression is avoidance. Silence is power. You don't know anyone you're in a world just because they asked for it. You don't need to explain your silence to people who don't understand it. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them sit in the discomfort of not knowing. Because every time you choose silence over impulse, you are reclaiming control. You're saying, I get to decide how much of me the world sees. And that decision, that's self-control. That is the essence of strength. Insecurity is not permanent. It's not a life sentence. It's a snapshot, one moment in the complex, ever-changing story of who you are. But when you share that insecurity too soon, when it's still tender and unformed, you risk freezing it in time. You risk letting someone else define you by the version of yourself you're trying to outgrow. And here's the truth, people don't update their perceptions easily. They lock in the image you gave them when you were still figuring things out, and they carry it with them long after you've evolved. What felt like a release in that moment becomes a label you never asked for. You might think, if I just say it out loud, maybe I'll take the power away from it. But words don't always liberate, sometimes they trap. Because once you give that piece of yourself to someone, you can't guarantee they'll see it for what it truly is, a temporary truth, a passing fear, a chapter, not your entire story. They might take that insecurity and frame it as a fact. And no matter how much you grow, how much you heal, they will still reference that version of you. That's the danger of exposing your uncertainty before you've reclaimed it as strength. People often aren't malicious, they're just limited. They lock in your past because they haven't updated their own. You've moved on. You've done the work. You faced the mirror and rewritten your own reflection. But to them, you're still that person who once doubted themselves, who once flinched, who once broke down. And they'll bring it up subtly or directly as if it still defines you. Not because they mean to hurt you, but because they never saw your evolution. And worse, they never asked. That's how narratives get stuck. That's how your past gets dragged into rooms it no longer belongs in. The more you share your insecurities when they're still raw, the more likely they are to be misunderstood. And misunderstood insecurities become myth stories people tell about you that aren't rooted in your reality anymore. They might even start offering you advice or protection based on who you used to be, not who you've become. And suddenly you feel boxed in, you feel unseen. You feel like you're fighting a version of yourself that no longer exists but still lingers in someone else's mind. It's exhausting. It's frustrating, and it can make you second guess your growth. That's why silence during your transformation is sacred. You need space to evolve without an audience, without opinions, without reminders of where you started. Growth is messy, uneven, and deeply personal. You owe it to yourself to walk through that fire without narrating every step to people who aren't equipped to witness your becoming. Because the moment you announce your insecurity too early, you invite perception before you've even found clarity. And perception is sticky. Revealing your dreams too early is one of the most underestimated mistakes people make. It feels natural, even exciting, to speak your vision into existence, to declare your goals, to tell someone, this is what I'm going to do. But most people don't realize that a dream spoken too soon is a dream exposed to doubt, disbelief, and dissection. You share it from a place of inspiration, but others hear it through their limitations. What you intended as a powerful declaration is received as a fantasy, an exaggeration, or worse, an invitation for critique. And suddenly your vision doesn't feel so clear anymore. It starts to shrink under the weight of outside opinions. The people you expect to support you, your friends, your family, your circle, are often the ones who clip your wings first. Not because they don't love you, but because they don't see what you see. They haven't lived your inner battles. They haven't tasted the fire that fuels your ambition. So they respond with questions, with warnings, with subtle comments that sound like concern but feel like rejection. Are you sure that's realistic? Do you really think you can do that? That's not like you. And just like that, you begin to question the thing that once set your soul on fire. Every dream needs space to breathe before it can be understood. It's like a seed, delicate, full of potential, but easily crushed if handled too roughly. When you expose it too early, before it's rooted in belief and discipline, it becomes fragile, vulnerable to doubt, vulnerable to fear. Not only from others, but from yourself. Because the second someone questions your dream, you start wondering if they're right. Maybe it is too much. Maybe it's too soon. Maybe you're not ready. And that spiral doesn't come from your soul, it comes from noise. Noise you allowed in by opening the door too soon. People don't just respond to your dream, they attach identity to it. They decide what you're allowed to want based on who you've been, based on your past, your current states, your current circumstances. And if your dream doesn't align with their version of you, they push back. They resist. They tell you to be realistic, not because they know your limits, but because they're uncomfortable with the idea of you surpassing theirs. Dreams, especially big ones, unsettle people. They reflect what others aren't doing. They challenge people to look at their own life, and that's not something everyone is ready for. Your vision isn't meant to be public during its infancy. It's meant to be nurtured in solitude. It's meant to be fed by your own belief, your own discipline, your own quiet confidence. Before the world ever sees it, you need to believe it fully. Not just on good days, but on the hard ones. When no one claps, when no one checks in, when the progress is invisible. That's the foundation your dream needs, not the applause, not the approval, but the unwavering commitment that doesn't require permission. You don't need an audience to build greatness. You need silence, you need focus. You need fire, private and powerful. So many dreams die in conversation. They're talked to death before they're ever given a chance to live. Not because they weren't worthy, but because they were shared too soon, with the wrong people, in the wrong moment. Let your results be your introduction. Let your success speak before you do. Protect the dream in its early stages like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. That dream is your future, your calling, your personal rebellion against mediocrity. Don't let someone else's small thinking become the lens through which you view your purpose. Keep it sacred, keep it safe, and let it grow in the dark until it's unshakable in the light. So remember this, your silence is not emptiness, it's intention. Your privacy is not secrecy, it's protection. The most powerful parts of you were never meant for public debate, casual conversation, surface level minds. You are allowed to guard your truth. You are allowed to hold your dreams close. You are allowed to heal in peace, grow in silence, and rise without explanation. The world doesn't need access to every corner of your soul to witness your greatness. Let them see the results, not the roots. Speak when it's time, not when you're pressured. Because what's sacred doesn't need to be shared, it needs to be honored.